main focus is all about Power Platform and Dataverse, and you can see that is why we have two groups in Auckland. So one is with Dynamics, recently renamed to Power Platform, but we are focusing corely on Power Platform and Dataverse integrations. And yeah, some of the basic house rules like please be on mute, and also the slide deck from Rami will be shared at at the end of this meeting. And also the feedback is always welcome. Like if you guys have anything to share, please reach out to us or to Rami as well as and this is the official link in Microsoft Power Platform area. And also we do this as a monthly meetup. Like every month we have virtual sessions, and I think two major events, which is one on February and one in November, which is the New Zealand Business Application Summit. There are like other user groups. I think yeah, I will post all this in the chat. Also, you can see Wellington Dynamics, which is led by Rami as well. So and also Christchurch, which is from Rich. So I will post all these links in the chat. And the star of the show today is Rami, who is a solution architect and also a Microsoft MVP, a famous guy in New Zealand. So not only in New Zealand, all over the globe. Over to you, Rami. So he's going to cover really cool thing about Dataverse and the Git integration.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Raghavan, for the intro. So I always say that if I shave my beard, I'm going to look like that picture that is in there. So I'll probably need a new profile picture. Yeah, it's probably about, I don't know, 10 years old, maybe more. Cool, thank you very much for that. What I'll do is I'll start by sharing my screen. Yes, I can share the slides if you guys are interested in that. But to be really honest, I don't have many slides. So this presentation is going to be mainly demo-led. So I wanted to just introduce some of the coolness or the good features that are introduced in the Git Dataverse Git integration. And I want to sort of just inspire you guys to understand what is the potential of actually using that integration. So first, I'll do a quick introduction about what the feature is. I'll talk about how to set it up in your environment. I've got a few instances of Dataverse that are not connected to Git, so I'll show you what will happen if you try and click on it and then get it to work. And then I'll just walk you through how it works. So we'll do an initial commit. We'll do an update from a Git perspective and see how you can get an update in your Dataverse environment. And then I can show you if there is a conflict between two environments that are happening on the same record, how we can get them. And then the last one is how can we do a two-way synchronization between two environments with Git in the background. We'll talk a little bit about the limitations towards the end, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So the idea behind it is that the Git integration, as it currently stands, it's designed specifically to allow you to save the content from a development environment, any configuration and customization that you've done, straight into the Azure DevOps Git solution or repository. Right now, it's only available for the development environments. It's not designed to be used in upstream environments. So it's not, for example, to deploy from a development environment into a test environment or UAT or production environment. This is not currently how it works. It will allow you to have the source of truth that moves from one environment that you've got into Git. So Git becomes the source of truth, not your environment. So there's a common term that is used in the industry right now, is to treat your environments like cattle, not like pets. And what we mean by that is that the environment, your dev environment that you're working on, you should not have any emotional attachment to it. You should be able to get rid of it and then recreate that environment from the source of truth that is coming from Git. And I'll sort of briefly show you how we can do that. Although the majority of the demos are going to be started from the maker experience today, and then we'll do some changes on the Git side and show you how that works. So that's the first two slides. After that, I believe I've got the slide about limitations, which I'll talk about later in the presentation. But what I've got in here is my instance. So I go to make.powerapps.com. It doesn't have to be the preview version of make.powerapps.com. So if you just open a new browser and type in make.powerapps.com. However, if you do want to go to the preview version of it, especially if there are some features that have not been enabled, I've got a little bit.ly in here, so bit.ly, and then it's pp Power Platform Make. And then you type in this short URL, and it will take you to make.preview.powerapps.com. And sometimes you might have some additional features, especially in those early preview programs, that will be enabled based on that. Anyway, going back to our environment, if I click on solutions in here, you're going to straight away notice that there is a little button called Connect to Git. So this has recently been introduced. It's in conjunction. So if I go to a solution, and then in the left-hand side, you've got the pipelines icon that has been recently enabled, relatively recently, so that pipeline. So now on top of that, you're going to have another one that will appear in here once it's configured that will allow you to connect your environment into a Git repository. So I've got a few environments in here. Source control preview 6 have never been connected to a Git environment. So if I click on that button, it's going to start giving me some options in terms of how I can connect to this environment. It's very simple. Sometimes it's just one sort of wizard page that will allow you to connect. However, if you select that you wanted to do it as a solution connection type, then it will have 2 pages on the wizard. What's the difference between having an environment connection type and a solution connection type? This is the first decision that you have to make in terms of the connection type that you're going to use between Dataverse and Git. Environment means that your entire environment is going to go into one repository. So everything that you have in that environment, any solution that is supported, will go into that environment. If you select solution, however, the connection will be done per solution. And that's why if I click on solution, for example, it's going to ask me, where is my ADO organization? Because I'm logged in as myself, and I also have access to ADO, which is in that tab over here, then it will automatically impersonate me and then call the ADO APIs to retrieve the different organizations that we've got. So I select one, and then from there, it will automatically know what are the projects that are available in there, and will give me the options to select a repository and a specific root folder. Now, because I selected solutions, is going to come up with a next button as opposed to a complete button or review button that will say, all right, well, select the solution that you want. Right now, the only one that I can select is demo because the default solution is not supported to be integrated with Git. And then this is another Microsoft out-of-the-box solution that also is not supported. So I select the solution that I want. I select the branch where I want to synchronize it with, and then the folder. So the repository will remain the same, but then each solution is going to have a different branch and a different folder as well. Now, if you're still not certain about which one to select, there's a little link that is available in here. If I click on it, it's going to take me to the Microsoft Learn, and it's going to give you some information about the overall admin documentation. Now, in here, you will be able to find specific information about the Dataverse Git integration. I can't remember exactly which link it is, but most likely what I tend to do is I put in Dataverse native Git integration, just in your favorite search engine, and hopefully it will be the first one. Oh, this is my video, so that's good that I'm at the top. Clive did another session at the Global Power Platform Bootcamp, which I uploaded a couple of days ago, so you can have a look at that. But then if you go into the overview of the Git integration, you will see that screenshot that I had in my presentation slide. And as you come down, it's going to talk a little bit about the benefits and what you need to do. But most importantly, as you go to the setup, is going to tell you the first thing you have to do, other than having an ADO connection set up, then you need to select the type of connection that you need to do. So either environment binding or solution binding. And there's a good description in here on what each one of them does and the things that you need to consider when you're actually selecting the one or the other. My preference so far is to use an environment binding. And that's because, based on my understanding, is that the structure that will end up in ADO is going to mirror the database structure that is actually in the Dataverse database, the metadata Dataverse database. So that gives you greater chance of compatibility and so on. Solution work slightly differently. The one thing I didn't like about solution is that if you want to choose the same component that is in two solutions, it will stop you from doing that. It will tell you that that component already exists in another solution, and you cannot actually go and add it into your solution and set it up, which is, I think they do it so that you don't have duplicates of the same components in different folders. So there's a good reason why they're doing that for tidiness, but it's something to consider when you're actually setting it up. Cool. So moving on from once you've set it up and then you're happy with what you have, then we can do it into another environment. In this case, I'm going to go to Oakland Hackathon B, where I've got a little solution called demo. Now notice how, as I mentioned before, sometimes if it's the default solution or if it's something else, it will not be supported. If it's a managed solution, for example, you cannot synchronize those. However, anything that you create, and those are custom solutions that I've created, then it will allow you to connect it to this environment. So just out of curiosity, if I click on that, you will notice this is a connection type of environment, which means that as it connects into ADO, you're going to notice that it has two folders. One, or it will actually have a complex folder structure. Within it will be a solution folder that will be one for demo 1 or for demo 2, Microsoft Demo and Demo 2. But at the same time, all the components are at a higher level, not at the solution folder level, at a higher level, so that you get the entire environment. Easiest way, once you've set it up, to navigate into ADO, I usually think, oh, maybe there's a URL that I can type. But unless you know what your organization name is and your project name is, it will take you to the Azure portal, not to ADO. So the easiest way to do it is click on Get Connection. And then there's a hyperlink in here saying this is what you've connected it to. So if I click on that, it's going to take me hopefully to the same folder as this one. Yep. So this is the repository. This is my Azure DevOps. I am in a project called DXC Preview, and I've got the source control preview component in here. And then those are all the repositories that I've got. I've just have one main repository that I use, which is source control preview. So as I mentioned, this is the complex structure that you're going to see. It rolls up everything that is in those solutions into their respective folders. So I've got entities. Within those entities, I've got attributes, I've got the ribbon, and so on. Like the forms as well, the saved queries. So we'll go and structure them in specific folders based on what you have in your solutions. And given that I've selected environment setup, environment connection type, if you have things in common, it will just put them in the same folder. It will just make sure it doesn't duplicate them. So for example, if I added all the attributes related to coffee order in two different solutions, it will just have one version under the entities, coffee order, and then the attributes and so on. However, as I mentioned, it will have a solution folder in here, one for demo 2 and the other one for Microsoft Demo, where we can just select it and then have the information that we need in there. Relatively straightforward, and the structure is easy and easy to understand. Now, one thing I really want to attract your attention to is that all those attributes are actually, all those fragments are YAML fragments. They're not XML fragments. So the way we used to do it in the past is that we would download the solution as unmanaged usually. We would use the pack CLI to extract that solution, and it will break it down into small XML fragments. Whereas now the way it's doing it is through YAML fragments. The reason why it's YAML is because YAML is easier to read from a human perspective. It's easy to read from a machine perspective. It's the new standard moving forward. So you had XML, you had JSON, and now you have YAML. It's a standard that, like it or not, is there to stay, and it's being used industry-wide. And I think most importantly, it's not as chatty, or it is not as wordy as something like XML, where you would have the same tag beginning and end, and then you would have the starting tag, the closing tag, and you'd have the value in the middle. In here, you just have the attribute name followed by column and then space, and then the value associated with it. So what we're going to do now is just have a look at how, when you make a change, you can synchronize that change between the environment that you've got and then Git. So if I go back into my instance in here, for example, and I just go into demo 2, and I have my table. This is the coffee order. I'm going to select columns, and then I've got the quantity attributes. So demo2, coffee order, and columns. So as this is coming up, hopefully it will load shortly. Then I'm going to have a look at the metadata associated with that specific attribute, and I'm going to go and update it. In the meantime, as it's going to load, so this is quantity, so coffee order quantity, and let's have a look at something that we can change. So the minimum value, for example, and the maximum value are set as 0 and 20. So let's see if I can change those and I can synchronize those changes. Sometimes you just have to do it again, and hopefully it will open faster. Yep, here we go. And that's the 0 and the 20 maximum value. So I'm going to change that into 30 and then click on save. Now, what I've done is that I am in my Maker experience. I am in an unmanaged solution in my dev environment, and I'm making a change to a specific attribute. So as I mentioned before, you will notice that on top of the new pipeline icon, now you have the Git icon. Now that we're connected, you can just quickly click on it and then have a look at what's happening. So automatically detected that I've made the change into an attribute associated with a table. It will tell you the name of that element, that component, the display name and the schema name, and then it will tell you what has happened, that it's an update. The one thing that I miss is that it doesn't tell you what has changed. Right now, as it currently stands, you will only know that there was a change and that you need to pick it up so that you can select it. And right now, you cannot cherry pick. So as you make multiple changes, you cannot cherry pick and say, I want this one, this one, this one, but I want to ignore the other ones. So the experience is not the same as when you're using a native Git integration or like, code Git integration, but hopefully over time, it's going to mirror what we have in here. So once I'm happy with that, then I'm going to say commit. I'm going to say updated the quantity metadata, and then click on the commit button. So what's going to happen is that it's going to extract the solution changes, is going to look at all the changes that has been done, and is going to push them as YAML fragments, and it will going to give you the exact commit link in here. So if I click on that, again, it's going to take me back to ADO. It's going to take me to the exact commit that I've made. It will have the information associated with it. So if I go on details, you'll see the description that I've added in there. It will have the blame, so we'll know that I am the one who actually committed it because I'm the one that clicked on the button. It could have been someone else who has made the change, but if I click on the commit button, that will be coming from my account. So this is where you need to consider, do I need an environment per user or per developer so that if there are multiple changes that are happening at the same time, then at least we can ensure that we know who is making those changes and pushing them in the environment. And then now you have the full power of Git. It will tell you exactly what was the previous value and what is the new value. So it will show you the changes from the previous line to the new line, and then it's already committed. So now this information is available into the repository that we've got in here. So let me go back here. So this is the previous version that was set up as 0 and 20. So if I just do an F5 in here, and then I zoom in, and then you can see the value that has changed, and you can see the history. We've just made that update, and you can see the message associated with that commit. So very simple, very straightforward, very quick as well. So as I made the change in there, you notice that it automatically actually picked up that change, and then it pushed it into this environment. So there's no, if you think about the old ways, there's no waiting for the solution to be extracted, calling the pack CLI to do a solution extract, and then breaking it into fragments, and then doing the commit. No, it's all native. You just do it from within the Maker experience. So far, so good. What I'm going to do next is the other way around. So I'm going to go into my Git environment. I'm going to go to entities. I'm going to go to coffee order. I'm going to go to attribute. I'm going to look at quantity. And in here, I'm going to edit that. Now, be very careful over what you're editing, because the Microsoft documentation clearly states that you will only be able to support any change that you currently do with the XML. So if you have, for example, the ribbon changes that you need to do, if you have some localization that you need to do, some views, some fetch XML that you need to change, that is supported. But anything else, like even what I did right now, even though it's a very small change, this is not supported. More specifically, you cannot go and create new attributes, create new forms straight into your source code if you want, or into those fragments, and then like retrospectively add them into the solution using this type of interface or VS Code, for example, and then synchronize it. It will work. If you know what you're doing, it will certainly work, but just keep in mind that this is not supported. It's like hacking the XML fragments and then doing a repack and then uploading that. We have done it in the past, but then if your environment goes into like has any issues or errors, and then Microsoft realizes that you've been doing things manually, then there's a good chance that they say, sorry, you've been doing unsupported work. We cannot support you in that specific instance. Okay, so I've updated the GitHub repository. So I'm going to go back into my environment, this one in here, and I'm going to click on check for updates. Now it's automatically going to connect to Git and have a look at what has changed. It detected there is one quantity that is updated. Now in here, I have a link. So if I click on that link, it's going to take me to that change. It's going to tell me exactly what is the file and then what has changed into that file. It won't show me the before and after, which is a bit of a concern because I know that that file has changed. I know right now that it was that value that has changed, but I'll have to go through the history to be able to see what was the latest change that was done. And then based on that, I'll be able to say, okay, well, now I understand the change from 30 to 40, and I understand what that change is. And if you're happy with it, then you do what we call a git pull. So you're pulling the information back into your environment. So if I click on that, then it's going to update that specific attribute, and it's going to increment the value from 30 to 40. So it takes a little bit of time, but this is equivalent to doing a solution import. So if you remember in the past when we used to do a managed solution import or even an unmanaged solution import, it used to take a little bit of time, like even clicking or even calling the pipeline to do that work for you. It takes time. This was like within seconds. So we synchronized two environments within seconds by just saying, all right, this is the change that I've made. I can see what those changes are. Let me bring them back. So going back into our maker experience, let's go to the solution. There, solution. Eventually when it loads, then I'm going to go into the demo. I'm going to go to the coffee table, to the specific column, the attribute, and I'm going to have a look at the quantity in here. Now, we changed it to 40, and that it has been reflected in there. Now I'm going to do something else. I'm going to change it to 50. But before I do a commit, I'm going to go into my Git environment, and I'm going to do another edit in here. I'm going to change that into 60, and I'm going to click on commit. It's going to ask me for a message, and I'll click on commit in here. So what we did right now is we made two changes at the same time, one in the Power Platform and one in Azure DevOps. So let's see what's going to happen in that specific scenario. I go to the Git integration, and it detected that there's a change. I'll do check for updates. And now it's going to detect that this is actually a conflict because the two changed at different times. And this is where the power of the Git integration comes in. So this has been native for pro coders for a very long time because Git is based on your file system, your time signatures, and so on. It detected that there were two changes that were done at two different timelines, that they were not synchronized back into the remote branch. And then that tells you that you have to decide what to do. So on the one side, you can click on that link and you can have a look at the latest version that is available in Git. So this is what we have in Git, 60. However, the one that we've changed was 50. It was not going to tell you what you currently have in there or specifically what has changed. It will just tell you that there's been a change. So what you have to do is go back into your solution and then go and have a look at that specific component that has a conflict and understand what is happening in that space. Some of the feedback that we gave to Microsoft is maybe it would be a good idea to have a side-by-side comparison where we can say, all right, well, show me the fragment that I have in my solution and the fragment that is coming into from Git. And then that way I can make a call on which one to choose. Right now, it's a bit hit and miss. So there may be a little detail of a change that has happened that you won't be able to see and understand. And then you may miss something that should not have been synchronized. Anyway, in this specific example, I'm going to take the one coming from the remote branch, so coming from Azure DevOps. So in order to do that, you can cherry pick in here, you select the one that you want and you say accept incoming changes as opposed to keep my current changes that I have in my environment. I click on OK, and then that detects it as an update. Then I can do a pull in here. And then when I do the pull, then it's going to update the quantity from 0.50 to 0.60, which is the behavior that we wanted. And now all those environments have been synchronized, and we've got parity between our environment and the source of truth, which is in ADO. So this is a good sort of demonstration showing you how we can push changes into ADO. For first of all, how we can set it up. Second, how we can push the changes into ADO. And then how we can make changes in ADO and then either synchronize them back into our environment, or we can just detect that there's been a conflict and we can decide which of the two files we would like to use. So that's step number one. But there's little value in doing that if it's just one environment, right? So you're just synchronizing it with ADO. And then what? What can you do with it, right? So and also the second part of the demonstration is when I was making the changes in ADO directly is not technically supported, right? Even though it was a small change. Now, if you have maybe some pro code stuff like a JavaScript web resource that you can certainly go and update in ADO, or like if you have VS Code, you can just get those JavaScript fragments, you can update them, you can synchronize them back into your environment, 100% supported. You can do that. This is what this feature is designed for. But this is a subset of the changes that we're doing. What if we want to do schema? We want to do more tables. We want to, add views or, change apps or something like that. How can we do that by leveraging this ADO capability? So what I'm going to show you next is two environments side by side. So let's open this one and let's open that one, right? Okay, so I've got two environments side by side. They're separate environments. So if I go into this little link in here, so this one is called Oakland Hackathon A. And if I go to this one is going to be called Source Control Preview 5. So two separate environments. However, what you will notice is that they both have Demo 3 as a common element in between the two of them. And then they are both connected, I believe, as solution connection types. So let's actually go to ADO and let's have a look at how this is fitting together. So click on this, git connection, and then go to ADO. Let's quickly have a look at what we've got. And then go back to my solution. Demo 3. Right, so this is the Demo 3. So again, the folder structure is slightly different. Because I've selected solution rather than environment, each solution is going to have its own folder. And within that folder, you will have entities, relationships, solution, and the rest of the information, right? Because remember, before, we had all of this just at a slightly higher level. And then the only thing that you had in the Demo 3, Demo 2, Demo 1 was the actual solution, not those components, because they were in common. Whereas now we've selected a slightly different behavior in there. Cool. So in here, we've got an entity called student. It has attributes. And hopefully, we also have a number of students or a grade, for example, in age. Let's have a look at age. All right, so we've got a minimum age of 0 and a minimum age of 200, which is not quite right. I don't think students will be 200 years old. So let's go back into our environment. And again, you can be using each one of those environments. So let's go into the one that is on the right-hand side, go into the table, go into the student, go to the column. And then this time, I'm going to go and update the value behind the age, right? So click on that and click on Edit. Now, going back here, it's set to 200. I'm going to save it and set it to 100. So I've updated the content in this specific development environment. Now, as I do that, again, as I demonstrated before, the Git integration will notice that there's been a change into that specific attribute, and I can go and decide to push those changes and commit them into my ADO environment. So I go into the Git, it detected the change, I click on commit, and I say updated age. And then click on commit. Now, the good news is that given that those two environments are connected to the same Git environment behind the scenes, so they have one source of truth, what I'll be able to do is go back to the environment that is on the left-hand side, and I can click to Demo 3, click on the Git integration, and I say check for updates. Now I'm prompting it to go and say, hey, if anybody changed anything in another environment, can you please bring those changes across? Now you will notice that there are 5 changes, even though we only made 1. When you want to synchronize, you cannot pick and choose what you want, so it's take all or take nothing. There's a little bug at the moment with the integration where the first time I did the synchronization, it detected that those changes have been made, but then even though I synchronized them, it's still coming up at there's been a change in that space. So that's a feedback that I given to the Microsoft team to hopefully go and address that little bug. But anyway, the important thing is that it detected that the DXC age has changed. And again, I can click on it, the URL itself, and I can go in and do those updates and then understand what those updates are. But instead, what I'm going to do is click on the pull. So it's going to take everything. There's no conflict because I haven't changed it into the environment that is on the left-hand side, but only on the environment that is on the right-hand side. So what I'm simulating right now is 2 developers working into the same solution, each with their own environment, the one making a change and then saying, hey, oh, I've made a change in here. Just make sure you update your solutions with the information that I've just done. And then someone else going into their solution and doing a check for update and then doing a pull to update that environment. Now, it wasn't lightning fast, but it was fast enough. Like imagine if you're doing a solution import, that was relatively quick in terms of you don't have to export the solution, you don't have to manipulate any XML, you don't have to even go back to source control and then push it through a pipeline or through an Azure custom pipeline or something like that. It's all done within the maker experience. And now if I go back into my specific solution, demo 3, and I have a look at that specific age attribute, it will be updated to 100 rather than 200. So very easy, very straightforward. It will save us a lot of time moving forward. So that now shows you the collaboration that you can do between 2 different developers working on the same solution in their own environments. Now, moving forward, and not supported at the moment, but maybe we'll be able to package that content that is available in there, and then we'll be able to push it into the right environment and then see what it's going to do. So going back to my presentation, let's talk a little bit about what we can and cannot do with the current state of the native Git integration. So as I mentioned, unmanaged only, right? So right now there's no support for the managed solutions. And then given that it's unmanaged only, based on Microsoft recommendation, it's for development environment only. So we do not recommend moving unmanaged solutions into test, UAT, pre-prod, and prod environments. Some people do it, but this is not the best practice. So keep in mind that this is meant for development side only and for unmanaged solution only. It currently only accepts single branch. So there's only one branch that is going to synchronize with. You cannot take like a branch out of that branch and then like merge it back. So you can't use complex branching strategies like Git flow or GitLab flow or something like that. Hopefully in the future, we'll be able to have some of that content and we'll be able to use complex branching strategies to do that. The conflict resolution, as I demonstrated, is relatively limited. So you won't be able to like visualize what the conflict is and pick and choose what you want, or even like use advanced merging techniques where you say, I want this fragment to come in and that fragment not to pass in or to come from the right or from the left. So none of that exists. The way you'll have to do it is maybe synchronize it in like Git different branches. So basically synchronize it in Git and then do a merge over there or do a cleanup as required. And then the last one is that, as I mentioned, there's limited things that you can do in terms of customization on the solution itself. So localization, code first, plugins, PCF, web resources, that's all good. Ribbon editing, fetch XML, that's all good. We're allowed to do that. We were allowed to do that in the XML, and then we're still allowed to do that in the YAML. But anything beyond that, like creating new attributes, new views, new fields, new tables, not supported. So be very careful about how to do that. Having said that, you can have specific APIs that you can call through the Power Platform sort of metadata APIs to go and create them. So if you want to do it the support way. And then I think this is what we're going to move towards. And then that's probably like a good premise for a future presentation. is, based on what Clive demonstrated when we're at the Power Platform Global Bootcamp, how can we use VS Code to call those APIs and generate the customization and configuration that we need, and then synchronize back with the platform that we've got, get the latest, and then make sure everything is okay. The other thing to note is that, as you're going through those integration bits in here, one of the things that we did last time is we ran static analysis on them, right? So for example, we've got logical names. Make sure that all the logical names are set as lowercase and none of them are in uppercase, like the schema names, right? When it comes down to, for example, security roles, if a security role is marked as read-only, make sure that all the content in that specific role is marked as read-only. So this is where we're introducing static analysis on the YAML fragments, which are basically a representation of the configuration that we've done, and then use that to our advantage the way we do it in pro-code environments. So I think now we're sort of crossing, or we're crossing path between low-code and pro-code, specifically with Git and all the schema changes that we're doing. And I think just by touching those two together, it's going to change the way we interact with the platform, the way we use the make.powerapps.com, and the way we build our solutions, hopefully in a better, more efficient way moving forward, where everything is a bit more streamlined. Cool. And then the last slide. So this is the URL that actually went and Googled. So if you put in a native Git integration for Dataverse, then it's going to come up with that link in there. And then you can go through all the different subsections to understand how to set it up, an overview, how to set it up, and how to commit your changes and then manage conflict resolution. There's also, if I can go back there, hopefully, this one. Just open it. If I go in there, then they're going to give you some FAQ. And within the FAQs, you can understand like what it is, what it's meant to do, but also there's a good element in here that talks about what you're allowed to do. So I can do code first components that is supported, but then the limitations on what should not be done and how you can go and update things. Yeah, and then as you can see in here, they're hinting that there are some APIs available. They are used for internal use only, but eventually I think hopefully they'll be able to expose them. And
can anyone hear Rami?
No.
And we lost you.
All right, I might have gone on mute. Is it just the last bit?
Yes, the last bit after that API.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No, and that was it. Like just the API integration, hopefully in the future will be available. But yeah, that was the end of my presentation. Hopefully you guys saw value in that type of integration. I think, again, as I mentioned, it's a new way of doing our work. So we will be doing more presentations around that to be able to explore it a little bit more and then see how we can leverage the pro code stuff that we usually do into the low code capabilities that we usually do in the maker.powerapps.com. The main goal in here is to improve our productivity. Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's talking about how AI can change, weeks worth of work in 1 hour. All right, let's have a look at how we can do that with the Power Platform. And this is the beginning of the journey. Cool. Any questions?
Yeah, there is a question from Partha. I think you can see on the chat. I think he has a use case.
Does it still make sense to use Git integrations? If that Dataverse is not used as the database? Yes. As long as you've got a solution. So the majority of the demo that I did today was around the schema, the attributes, and so on, which are basically the database tables and columns. But you can do it for other things. So if you have a Power Automate, for example, if you
We lost you again.
I think it went back on mute. Maybe I'm actually like pushing on my headset and not doing it on purpose. Anyway, sorry. I was saying that yes, it is definitely worth having a look at it. There's also the component of the Canvas app that I didn't cover. So Canvas app recently has gone GA in terms of supporting the YAML fragment behind Canvas. So if you're building Canvas apps with a SharePoint background as well, you can certainly use that moving forward. Cool. And you've got your hand up, Jiro?
Sorry, I'm muted. So I have a couple of questions. One of them is, since like it's all with the dev environment, like an individual environment, not dev environment. So, but in pretty much in projects, we use the like a specific development environment where all of us start. We all of us use the one environment to create solutions. So, any roadmap for Microsoft to have it in kind of a dev environment to use this integration, or what's the purpose of just having it in the different development environment?
Right. So yes, you can still use the one environment. Again, it goes against what I said in the beginning, that you need to treat your environment as cattle, not like pets. So your environment is your pet. You probably give it a name like, development, Jiva's development, or, full development, or whatever it's called. Which means you're emotionally attached to it, right? So imagine if your environment disappears, like, I don't know, it crashes, or, something happens, and you'll be like, oh no, my pet is gone. So the idea behind it is that you will have a backup in Git that you can go and rebuild this environment in no time. Now, keep in mind that this will also have some issues in terms of, the data is going to be gone. So you need to think about how you can rehydrate it with the correct data. But moving forward, I think what Microsoft is going to do is allow you to move those solutions, either managed or unmanaged, across environments. I think this is imminent because this is where the true value will come from the solution. So all I can say is keep watching that space. I think there may be some announcements that will come either next month or closer to some of the larger conferences that Microsoft is going to do. Keep an eye on it. There's lots of activity happening in there. If you do have feedback, feel free to contact us, any of the MVPs. We are part of the private and public previews of those programs, and we've got sort of direct contact lines to the product team. So we can tell them, hey, the community is asking for X and Y. That might be a good solution to add in there. And usually they're really good at listening to us and then making that happen. So yeah, happy to hear feedback and then see how we can improve the product.
Yeah, that's what I'm a bit thinking about, because so in terms of the making it and currently keeping it unsupported when we are building these components, which pretty much restricts the advantages of generating, as you said, the YAML files, like what Oliver told us, said that I'm sure that they regarding the generating them with the AI, or whether you're rebuilding something and then packaging it a solution. But since that becomes an unsupported component now, that's where the organizations will restraints, and that's one thing. Second thing is also, when we have one environment where multiple developer needs to work on something, which is the ideal scenario, which is the classic scenario. And this is going to be a limitation. I mean, because we are talking about one environment for one person, but that's not always the real-time scenario, right? We will always have multiple person working on environment.
Yeah. You'll still be able to use it, right? So maybe like the feedback that I hear in here is maybe like allow them to be very selective over what they're committing. So I've made the change into one table, you've made the change into another table. We're using the same environment. Just be selective over what you're committing, what I'm committing, what the other person is committing. And then once you've got that, then at least you've got the blame game. So you know who changed what at what time. And then they all go into the same repository. And then once they're on the repository, then you can promote them into other environments. So that's definitely a valid use case that can be sort of elaborated on moving forward.
Okay. All right. Yep. That's all from my side.
Sounds good.
So am I hearing that? So this Git integration is only applicable to the developer environment type. Is that right?
At the moment, yes.
I don't think so, Rami, because I'm using it for my sandbox and other type of different.
No. So sorry. So what I meant is the like unmanaged development environment that you use on a day-to-day basis, like as Jiva is saying, like we've got one dev environment that all the developers are sort of doing the configuration, not the development type of environment. Like you can use sandbox and all of that, that's
I
fine.
see.
But I mean like unmanaged solutions that you're actively working on. That's what I meant.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sorry, slightly off topic, but related to Git integration. So what is the easiest way to generate a documentation for a solution?
Right. So in order to do that, actually, I think just yesterday or in the last couple of days, the PowerCat team announced a new solution that you can deploy into your environment that will use AI to automatically generate documentation for your solution. So look that up, PowerCat team, and then document generation for Power Platform. Eliza was talking about it today in her session, so it's an interesting one to have a look at and see how they're doing it. But the way we've done it is to use some prompts with GitHub Copilot to go and read the content and generate. But you have to teach it how to do it. You have to give it the prompts. You have to tell it, if you see this, that means that. If you see that, then that means something else in order for it to generate your documentation. And Clive did a good example in the Power Platform Bootcamp where he did that for the security roles. And that is going to be so valuable for us because, as I said, you push that into the YAML fragments, and then you use like a pipeline to go and trigger those prompts and to say, hey, can you document that for me? So that we don't have to go and do it manually ourselves. That's the one thing. But then the second part is that given that it's a YAML type of fragment, then it's significantly cheaper to read from a tokens perspective because it's not as verbose as when you have an XML fragment. So definitely going to be an advantage on both sides. And again, like who likes to write documentation, right? So if you get an automated process do it for you, and I can guarantee you it will be better than the documentation that I write, right? So it's always really good to see that, hey, if it can get 80% there, that's 90% more than what I can do. So it's if it can take that burden off you, then definitely a big win in there.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will check the PowerCat video.
Yeah. I'll see if I can find a link, I'll share it with you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just found it.
Yeah.
Found it.
Oh, right. Okay. Awesome. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
I
AI
believe,
documentation. That's the one. Yeah. PowerCat team.
I believe at
Yes.
some point, if it is going to generate an architecture diagram as well, then problems solved.
Don't say that. Then I'm not gonna have a job anymore. Yeah. No. All good.
Oh, thank you. Anyone else has any questions?